The Tears of the Kingdom development team have been doing interviews recently, given they were in the US ahead of their success at the Game Awards in 2023. Well, Eiji Aonuma has raised some eyebrows responding to fan requests for a more linear experience or an older style Zelda game. Well, today we're going to have a look into Eiji Aonuma's response, plus have a look at where linear games came from in the series and what was the breaking point for fans that helped Nintendo pivot into Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Well, Eiji Aonuma's been speaking to Kat Bailey from IGN ahead of the Game Awards 2023, where Tears of the Kingdom would go on to win Best Action and Adventure Game. And Aonuma acknowledged that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom had definitely taken The Legend of Zelda in a new direction. Aonuma puts this down to nostalgia and fans wanting the thing that we don't have. He also added there was a set path in Tears of the Kingdom, but it's a path that the player dictates rather than Nintendo. Aonuma goes on to say, it's interesting when I hear people say they want more linear Zelda, because I'm wondering, why do you want to go back to a type of game where you're more limited or more restricted in the types of things or ways you can play? But I do understand that desire we have for nostalgia, so I can understand it from that aspect. But I do think we as people have a tendency to want the thing that we don't currently have, and there's a bit of a grass is always greener mentality. Breath of the Wild went through a whole load of changes from its release to the final release of Tears of the Kingdom, with the Zelda team taking on loads of feedback from fans. One example of this is the dungeon design, and Aonuma discussed dungeons by saying, "But then we did hear a desire from fans for a bit more of a designed dungeon, and that led to our approach to dungeons for Tears of the Kingdom. And so as we proceed, whenever we're making a game, we look back at our past and then consider where we are now with the freedom that we give to the player in these games." Well, divine beasts in Breath of the Wild were felt to be lackluster by many fans, me included, and therefore the temples were fleshed out in Tears of the Kingdom to be much more similar to traditional style Zelda games. Although in my opinion, while they certainly were better in Tears of the Kingdom, they still don't really hold a candle to the temples in Skyward Sword, Twilight Princess or Ocarina of Time. It's not surprising Zelda fans are looking back for a more traditional Zelda experience. From 1986 to 2017, the games followed a relatively similar format. Link would solve a series of dungeons in a set order. You'd earn items along the way which would open up more of the world around you. Then you'd save the day by beating the bad guy. More often than not this was Ganon or Ganondorf. And then you'd save Princess Zelda and maybe even regain the Triforce at the same time. Job done. There's optional content in Zelda games, plus in Ocarina of Time you can complete dungeons out of order. But it wasn't until A Link Between Worlds in 2013 where we got our first real glimpse of the world where we could choose where to go and what to do, with Nintendo giving us the player the choice of which dungeons to do and in what order. It was a huge departure from the recent 2011 Skyward Sword, and that would release 4 years after A Link Between Worlds in 2017. I don't really think it's a bad thing that Zelda games are moving on from the linear format. They were a sign of the times, and the times have simply moved on. So Zelda games have to move with the times to stay relevant, otherwise they're going to be left behind with other defunct franchises, and to be honest, none of us really want that. Skyward Sword was probably the point in time where Zelda fans cried out and said no more. Ocarina of Time sold 14 million copies, Wind Waker sold 6.8 million copies, and Twilight Princess just over 10 million. Skyward Sword in comparison only sold 3.67 million copies, although it was boosted later with an additional 4 million copies when the HD version was released on Nintendo Switch. However, this revival of Skyward Sword took 10 years and it had to be released on one of Nintendo's most successful platforms. The initial sales figures tell me that people were fed up with linear Zelda and wanted a change, and fans, well, they definitely spoke with their wallets. Skyward Sword was famed for its lengthy tutorials, over-explaining everything and Fee being rather annoying, pointing out every rupee every time you picked one up. The opening to Breath of the Wild was such a contrast to Skyward Sword. You didn't have much information. You woke up, stepped out into the literal wild, and found your own way. The Great Plateau was just a taste of what was to come in Breath of the Wild, but it was everything that Skyward Sword was not, and to be honest, at the time, that was great. The next brand new Zelda adventure is likely years away, given the cycle time of development is about 5 to 6 years for open world Zelda. Eiji Aonuma has confirmed the series isn't going back to its linear roots, and that may disappoint some fans, but there are some fantastic other games out there which are like the Legend of Zelda. Games like Death's Door, Eastward, Nobody Saves the World, Okami and Tunic. These are all great indie games which take inspiration from Zelda roots and present new and interesting worlds to explore and discover. I would definitely recommend checking them out if you are yearning for a linear style Zelda adventure. Of course, you've got loads of Zelda titles on Nintendo Switch Online as well, so you can go back and experience those linear Zelda games. They are still really fantastic, even in the present day. I really look forward to the future of Legend of Zelda, and I can't wait to see what Nintendo is cooking up for us next. But what do you think that is going to be? Share your ideas down there in the comments, and also let me know what you think about linear Zelda. Do you want to see more linear Zelda in the future, or are you happy with the direction Nintendo is taking it with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom? Well, that is it today for this look at linear Zelda games, our games of the past. And as always, thank you so much for watching or for listening. Well, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below. It would really, really help me out. And you can also hit that like button and that share button if you're really feeling generous. Well, thanks again, and I will see you very soon.